Okay, everybody, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a very, very special review for you guys from the brand Christopher Ward. A little about them. They are London based out of the UK, and they're an independent brand that grew up from a niche micro brand. Now, in terms of the type of watch, I'd consider this a wild card watch. Now, some key characteristics and design language to look for when you're looking for something within this genre. Of course, you're going to want to find a standout or statement timepiece that trades versatility and timelessness for all-out style and peak design. This is their C1 Bel Canto Classic in the Argento or silver dial variation. Now, this is the remarkable second iteration of Christopher Ward's critically acclaimed and even award-winning hits, refreshed with a more classic feel featuring a guilloche dial, a Roman numeral index, and a box domed sapphire crystal. Now, these go for $4,225 on the fine Italian leather strap as seen, which does come on a very nice deployant buckle. I didn't catch the first round of the Bel Cantos. I saw them like everybody else did on YouTube. I thought they were great. But man, this one caught my eye, and a big shout out to Christopher Ward for lending in this review sample for me to spend a little bit of time with it so I can share my thoughts with you all. I think this is a much better looking watch than the original Bel Canto, which wasn't bad looking. But I will say that one was probably even more of a wild card. I think this one might have even finessed its way into like an everyday dress watch category, because I think it actually does have that elevated level of refinement so that you can have a little bit more versatility with this piece, and you could wear this. And you don't have to be some, crazy guy, with a yacht and a Lamborghini to be wearing something that's this complex and really overtly, awesome looking, right? Like, it is a bit in your face, but I think with this Argento colorway and just the pops of blue, and really the thing that's creating all of the visual excitement here is going to be the texturing. It's going to be the finishing. I mean, that high polished finish there on all of the little bevels, and even on the bell portion of the Bel Canto. I mean, they're extremely beautifully done. So I do like that you can kind of just take a little glance at this and go, ooh, what is that? And then you look closer and you're like, wow, okay, like, take note, this thing is cool. So yeah, I dig it. Like, this is a really, really cool watch, and I'm appreciative to have a chance to spend some time with it. It is in titanium. The chiming does sound really, really cool. So with all that said, let's go ahead and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys. Now, as you can see, this thing is glorious. But one thing, we got to get out the way is the chime action. So let's go ahead, pop the crown out, and essentially the way this chime works is you can see there's actually an on and off button. So essentially that indicator where you can see that blued little beak there, you can have it on or you can have it off. And that is, it doesn't always do that. It's more so because I think the crown's out, so there's some free spun there. But basically, once we go all the way around, we make a revolution. Ooh. Go again. Just lovely. I mean, it's not super loud. It's not in your face. It's just, it's nice. You hear that? Honestly, like, it is nice. Do you need it? Do you even want it most of the time? I'll even say, I don't know, maybe not. Like, it's cool, but I mean, honestly, it could not chime and it could just look this good. And there's, this open work style dial is just absolutely gorgeous. And if you don't like the chime, or you're in a situation, you're watching a long movie or something like that, you don't want that to make any noise, you just pull it back and press the button, it's off, or you turn it on, right? So very, very cool. It's a cool feature. It's nothing that I would ever ask for in a watch, but my goodness, now that I know it exists, I mean, it is killer. And no, this isn't a cheap watch. It's over $4,000. And this isn't for everybody. Like, nobody needs a watch like this, but for somebody like me, who's a collector, who goes to watch meetups and events and like talks watches all the time, like, this is ultimately interesting, because it's combining kind of two different worlds, right? You're getting this ultra kind of refined, look that is definitely very classic and something that is, very kind of old world. And then you're combining it with some very new technologies and ideas. Even the guilloche here is laser engraved. It's not the typical kind of old school guilloche type of finish. So, I mean, there's just a lot here that's very interesting. The brand itself is very interesting. Swiss made watches with the English heart, all that stuff, right? And I've covered Christopher Ward for so many years. And this is like, for me, one of their new pillars, right? Like, they were built on the platform of the C60 Trident, and that's still the volume seller. And then you have stuff like this and the 12, right? That are really something to show an elevated aspect to the brand, where it does kind of branch off, right? Where not everybody like Christopher Ward are going to like these watches, but there's going to be some people who like these watches that don't care for anything else in Christopher Ward but this watch, or maybe the 12 as well, right? So, yeah, it's cool. Another thing that's very surprising is the dimensions here. It's 41.5 millimeters. And for a dress watch with a pretty open, large dial, I would typically be like, that's way too big, but I will say this thing wears awesome. And it's a lot of things working together, in unison, which is going to be things like the proportions, right? Even though it's an open dial, the actual watch face is tiny, right? Like, it's a sub dial essentially. The hands are small, like, all the way that the space is used is very different. And then especially since, it's a silver dial, so there's no contrast against that case. So then you would think it'd be even bigger, but it's just not. And it's also, I mean, look at the bevels on here, the titanium. It's grade 5 titanium, guys. So this is going to take a beautiful polish, beautiful brushing to it. It's going to be an alloy. It's not going to be as pure as titanium grade 2, but it's going to be better in most other ways, in terms of the strength, in terms of the ability to take on a lustrous polish. This is going to be very handsome, and it's going to be a bit brighter, of course, and by comparison in terms of tonality for grade 2. And it's more expensive, right? It's an expensive watch, and it's using a more expensive material. Now, in terms of the thickness, guys, including the crystal, it's 13.3 millimeters thick. And the crazy thing is that it doesn't wear that thick. Like, this thing, it's as much of a magic act that it pulls for everything else in the same way. Like, it makes 13.3 on a dress watch not seem that bad. It's 47.5 millimeters lug to lug, and it works. It has a nice, you can see the turn down sweeping nature of the case. It hugs the wrist beautifully, and I do like the asymmetry around, having the pusher, having the crown there on the one side offset, but it still looks really great. Nicely signed crown there, with their twin flag logo, and then a very nicely finished little mechanical pusher there, to again switch that indicator from on or off. You get a box dome sapphire crystal with an inner AR coating, guys, and the original one didn't have quite as nice of a box dome sapphire, and it was actually a bit thinner. But here the nice thing is, you got to understand that this adds to visual weight, slightly, but physical thickness and heft, it's not really doing anything. Like, this is not, actually I should say for either. I mean, yes, it's going to be physically thicker, but it's not adding that much visual weight. But I will say it's adding a lot of visual interest for, an extra millimeter. So I dig it, and I think it's really well executed. You're not seeing, a lot of imperfections in the way that this is domed, in terms of leaving you with like a lot of thick, milky kind of outline. I think it still negotiates those compromises really well. So really nice box dome sapphire. The crown is a push pull, which is expected here, guys. You're not gonna there's no need to have this be with, with a screw down crown. The movement inside is actually an automatic Sellita SW200 with this FS01 module. So it's going to have still the 38-hour power reserve, the 24 hertz beat rate. So that's 28,800 vibrations per hour. And it'll still be accurate to plus or minus 20 seconds per day, which isn't earth shattering, especially at the price point. But again, you're not buying something like this for ultimate accuracy anyway. And the good news is, because it's a Sellita, you could get it regulated if you really, really wanted to. Now, in terms of the case back, it is nice and solid, and they say deep. I believe they, on the website, it might have the verbiage. Let me give it a quick little wipe here. As deep stamped. I'd say this looks more like etching to me. It's a good etch. Of course, it has that kind of sound wave motif, which I think looks really, really cool. And you can also notice that it's, 3 atmospheres, which is only 30 meters in terms of its water resistance. But again, you're not buying this thing to be a sports watch or to take with you on sporting events. You're not going, oh, let me grab this before I jump on my jet ski. Like, this is definitely for more of a, refined wear. But I think the cool thing is, because of its more modern layout and the open work layout is interesting enough, you can actually wear it with very casual clothes like t-shirt, jeans. This would still be fine. It would be a nice kind of little juxtaposition between kind of casual and dressy, especially with the really, really lovely strap that they have here, which is, they put it in the verbiage, fine Italian leather strap, but I will tell you, yes, it does feel quite fine. Just to the touch, you do have quick release spring bars. You have a really nice dramatic taper down to actually 16 millimeters, which is great. And then you do have this signed push button deployant, which I believe is also in titanium, and it works. It's very, very good. So with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, this wears absolutely beautifully. Ooh. And I know some of you are thinking, it's too big. It's not. It really isn't. It works. Guys, there's something again about the way that the dial is framed with all of the open work elements, combined with, of course, the lighter weight of the titanium, with all of the contours in terms of the case. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens here, you're going to get a fair amount of perspective distortion, which is going to make the watch, ooh, you got a little chime there. Nice. It's going to make the watch seem, larger than it actually is, right? It's just the same reason why smaller watches typically look better when you're doing a wrist shot, for Instagrams, because people are shooting those with their phone. And then, it's just, you have to take it with the phone close to the wrist, right? To get the good look, because you don't want to use digital zoom or something. But here, since I do have an optical zoom, the nice thing is I can keep my wrist nice and low and then tighten up the frame here so you guys can, still get a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And although my wrist is on the larger side of average at 7.5 inches, it is also quite tall and round. So it's not like I have this wide, super accommodating wrist. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not concerned with lug to lug. I'm not concerned with diameter. Like, I am absolutely concerned with all of those things when it comes to how something's going to wear. I will say again, this watch, in terms of its wear profile, it's quite deceiving. And it wears very nicely. Now, it doesn't wear petite. It doesn't wear, ultra vintage, if that's what you're looking for. It wears like, for me anyway, it wears proportional to the design of the watch. I think it looks great. And again, it does have its toe kind of dipped in various categories, because of the level of refinement, but also the level of playfulness and just the level of execution in the fine details. This thing just rocks, guys. Look at that. Look at the way it hugs the wrist. And from this profile, you wouldn't necessarily expect it's going to be anything too wild, right? Too abrasive or polarizing. But then you get into this and it's just like, whoa. I will say again, I feel like in the classic styling here that they made versus the original C1 Bel Canto, that this does inherit a lot more versatility. And while it's less polarizing, I think more people will like this watch, while I would say the original, maybe more people would love or hate it. Here, I think this really hits a beautiful sweet spot, and I just... If I had $4,000 burning a hole in my pocket, let me tell you, I would get on that email list, because this is just, it just offers you something so different than what a lot of other watches within that, which I think is smart about the pricing, right? Like, some people will be like, oh, Christopher Ward, this is too expensive for a Christopher Ward. You know, they're branching out, they're expanding, and at the end of the day, what this competes with is just so different than what typically an enthusiast would be looking for at this price point, right? They're looking at divers and everyday type of watches, from an enthusiast perspective, right? Where this might be the top of what they're looking for versus, yeah, of course, higher end customers. They're going to want to buy this on the spot because this is much cheaper than a much more, a $10,000 watch, with an open work dial, right? Like, and then you're getting this thing that's funky. It's cool. It's very relevant in terms of Christopher Ward and what it's doing within the market. So there's a lot of things to appreciate, from, of course, a lot of different, subjective facets when you look at the watch. But I would say for somebody like me, somebody in the enthusiast kind of crowd who doesn't own a lot of luxury watches, typically, the higher you go up, you're just paying a lot for the name and for the marketing and for that kind of street cred, right? Like, oh yeah, like, can you get a pilot's watch that is just as capable as an IWC? Yeah, absolutely. You can get a Laco, and it's like, it's so capable and functional, and it does everything you need it to do, but it's just not an IWC. And that IWC is going to be finished to a higher level, of course, but for a pilot's watch, is it as like, it doesn't need to be that fine, but it is, which is great, and you get your money's worth from that perspective. Here, it's just like, yeah, Christopher Ward's just bringing something that feels expensive. It feels complex. It feels thoughtful. It feels deliberate. It feels alive and exciting. And it's, you can attribute the cost to those things. And it's not just, oh, well, I'm paying for them to get this ambassador to hold this, and wear it at various gala events where there's going to be a bunch of paparazzi, or anything like that. Like, there's no strategic marketing play here. It's just, hey, they like the watches. Of course, they're going to church up a bit of the sales pitch. That's what you have to do as a salesperson, right? And especially with how competitive the market is. But yeah, this one's just, it's beautiful. I don't want to get it off the wrist, but I'm going to have to, so that we can, although there's no lume here, I'll still do like a low light transition and leading into the closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. We won't turn this one all the way off. What we'll do is we'll just kind of bring it down as we get the little handheld up. Hit this. And get into some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see how these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. You can see those thermally blued hands are beautifully blue. The level of depth there, the hand stack cap, just chef's kiss from that perspective. Then you got the guilloche, just playing with the light, adding some texture, adding some movement to this open work backdrop. It's just gorgeous. Then you look at the level of deep polish, the high polish. Then with the satin, whether it's blasted or brushed, there's so many different textures playing off of each other all at once to provide you with a nice amount of contrast, not just on the printed Roman numeral index, but just at the open work layout and seeing the hardware, the little levers, the little arms, all of those moving pieces that are exposed and balanced in a way that, again, it's just balanced. Like, that looks really cool. Like, I dig that they went through the trouble of creating, this layout that was pleasing to the eye, and it wasn't just, a functional, hey, that makes a cool sound, but it looks good doing it. So that's just a little little extra level of thought that I absolutely can appreciate. And yeah, again, there's no loom here, guys, but this is not a watch you're buying for its low light capabilities at the end of the day, guys. So with that said, oh my, I'm going to be sad to see this one go, because knowing that I'm wrapping up shooting this watch means it's only a matter of time before it's back in a box and sent on to the next either reviewer or back to Christopher Ward, London. So with that said, closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist, this wears surprisingly well. The complex openwork dial really helps scale down that visual weight of the dial as a whole, and the lightweight titanium cuts the physical heft down as well, which combine to ensure for that, 41.5 millimeter case, it just prevents it from ever feeling oversized, which is awesome. And one thing I forgot to mention here, guys, 22 millimeter lugs. I don't know, I feel like I did mention that, but just in case I didn't, tapering down to 16 millimeters, signed push button deploying clasp. In terms of the blued accents, that's the blued handset as well as that selection indicator. And those are the I don't remember if I missed those or not, but maybe I'm just rambling now to get more time with this piece. In terms of model variants, check the site links for current options and availability. These have sold very, very well for them. Obviously they're not making such huge production runs. One, because it's quite complex to do, and two, because it's not like this is meant to be their bread and butter. They understand that the C60 Trident is still going to be, keeping the brand moving forward and paying the bills. But this thing is just more of an aspirational piece, and it's an exciting project that, skilled artisans and true enthusiasts really poured a lot of their heart into. So, when I see something like that within, such a competitive industry, it's just unique, and I like that. So in terms of comparable models, guys, this is such a unique piece. The value proposition in the market, it's hard to find any really direct competitors that are, that share similar features or similar price points. Like if you have something in mind that has like a similar feature set, it's going to cost a lot more. If you have something that's in your mind that costs around $4,000, it's going to be much less complex. I mean, ultimately, it will be nice. There are some great watches, within that time, within that price point, that are really great and aspirational. That are going to have COSC movements, that are going to have, deeper water resistance, more heritage, or anything like that, right? But in terms of the combination of this and how special it is with the price point, I think that's where it really kind of stands alone within the market, and it's a bit of an anomaly. So for me, guys, the bottom line is I thought the original Bel Canto was cool. It was a cool watch, but, I wouldn't really have considered one due to kind of the mixed bag of styling cues that it had, right? It was kind of modern, but kind of a throwback. It was just not necessarily the watch for me in terms of what I would be looking for something that is within this space in particular. While this new classic variant really brings everything together for me, feeling much more deliberate and purposeful in design, which elevate the level of refinement into a space that I now find very compelling. And while $4,000 is a bit outside of my general kind of comfort zone for a single watch, I've definitely spent more money than that on watches over the years, especially having a YouTube channel. The quality and overall package of the C1 Bel Canto Classic really give me zero reservations about the value for money ratio. So I wasn't sure if that would be the case when I handled in person, because I've handled some really, really nice high-end pieces. Thanks to the channel, thanks to the great, San Diego community, out here with a lot of the different groups that meet up, thanks to Instagram and kind of networking everybody and being able to see some really cool watches, not just in, underneath a piece of glass, right, at a jewelry store, or at an authorized dealer, but also on people's wrists, right, and interacting with them. And this, man, I tell you what, there are a couple of watch meetups this month that I would love to be wearing this to. Like, this, I think that's really the sweet spot for this, right? Like, yeah, Seiko Pro Specs, their sweet spot is for like a professional diver who's like, oh, cool, I want something that looks good, that has relevance, that I can wear when I'm not diving, but is absolutely going to be super capable when I am diving, right? Like that kind of sweet spot, although that's not the entire market, right? Like that's the one where it really resonates. For me, something like this completely resonates, you know, just pitch perfect, right? Pun intended, with the enthusiast market. Like the stuff that we geek out about as watch fans and watch collectors, like this is that. This feeds that. This scratches that itch to an extremely high level. So yeah, big shout out. Thank you to Christopher Ward for sending this piece in so that I could get a look at it. This thing is just flawless in my eyes. And yeah, this would be my pick of the litter. If I was going to purchase one of these, it would be the silver dial. I know that's not, some people would want, you know, more contrast, more flash for the money. For me, I think the understated balance here that you're going to get is what makes it more attractive to me versus some of the previous iterations, which can be louder, which can be more exciting, more fun and flashy. But for me, this, where, you know, at a glance, very subdued, very well put together and cohesive, and then you look closer and then you're like, you're kind of blown away by all the little details. I love that approach to design. So with that said, let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do a like, and if you're ready, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.